Hello and welcome to another video where we're playing a RuneCraft rotation deck. This one is reasonably interesting. It's more focused on, of course, the Zealot of Truth and Omen of Craving and Embodied Witch combinations that can really top out a deck. In particular, Omen of Craving buffing zero cost Zealots is absolutely insane. It also uses Lovely Harmonica, which is a nice little card actually, messing around with it a bit. Getting that extra value every single turn is actually really nice, provided of course you can get it to proc. Otherwise, pretty straightforward for the rest of the deck, pretty basic starter package for any kind of mildly aggressive deck, and then kind of the simple deal with things, draw cards, mid-range variant. Not a big fan of Verderic? Yeah, Discovery, either way, as it just feels a little off to me, but it does go well with things like Conjure Golems and of course the Mysterian Golems, quite nicely, so I mean it has its place. So we're going to get right into this and check it out. First up, Portalcraft. In particular, an Omen Rotation Cup champion. Interesting. We're running a pretty simple engine, of course, so you really just want to go for reasonably low cost cards that you can spell boost things. So this actually isn't half bad. Zealot into Conjure Golems and stuff will actually be quite good. Fate's Hand is okay. I definitely would sell for a Fate's Hand, especially going first. So there's our first Conjure Golem. It's great that it sticks things to the board, which does allow it to deal with Portalcraft reasonably well, especially when comboed with something like Wind Blast and even more draw power. So you want to get in kind of as much damage as you can early on so that you can get to your finishes kind of mid to late game. Of course, the Embodied Zealot combo is very late game, but I find Omen of Craving is of course very mid range, so that works out quite nicely. Then we have, of course, now a zero-cost Fate's Hand, which should boost both these Zealots quite nice. Along with, of course, the Omen of Craving, which does give us a 10 damage burst on turn 7, provided we can spell boost these Zealots right down to 0. That's going to be very important later on. So, starting with the Fates, going for the Mysterian Knowledge, since we don't really have many options. And then, of course, Tsukiyomi, because we're already at max health, and we may as well go for the extra ping damage when we evo this to ram it into the 3-4. With an evo point, of course, we could get these Zealots to 12, but I don't feel like we're going to make it there since Portal typically has some decent valued cards, and really evolving tends to be the only way I can get over them. Although we do have Snowman, which is going to be a pretty nice advantage to have, since of course we can just flood with some decent storm damage and really go for victory that way. We're going to get our Zealots to 0. Along with going for another Tsukiyomi, even though it's probably going to instantly die to a puppet, it should still get at least the single ping, which honestly is much more important to me. So we're not going to win with the Zealot combo this turn, but with a Snowman play we should be able to hopefully take the game. The only real risk is that they leave all the Snowmen up or trade with them in such a way that they can get black onto board. That would be absolutely devastating, but I don't feel like they've had enough kind of puppet play to really do that. So, use the Eval on the Snowman, get the extra damage in now, so that our Zealots are going to be more than enough for lethal next turn. Considering they are, of course, going to have the healing proc. Destructive Refrain, that was another card I was a little worried about, full clear. But, as long as they're not healing, we should have lethal. Which is exactly what we wanted with the Zealots. So, double Zealot of Truth and Omen of Craving, and that'll be 10 damage. It's actually one of my favourite combos to pull off, surprisingly. Our next match is against Forest. I've seen Forest rising up the ladder a little bit lately, definitely seen a lot more Forest around. So Insight, Conjure Golem, and a Fate's Hand. All of which aren't bad options. So we're going to go basically straight into the Insight, there's no reason to avoid it. Other than potentially, of course, going for the Mysterian Knowledge, but I feel like just playing Conjure Golem next turn against Forest is going to be more than enough. Of course, we get another Insight. Which isn't bad, it's just going to be a little clunky now. It's still going to be a really good card though. Of course, our opponent manages to clear and get the damage in. Exactly what they would want. At least for us, though, this Mysterian is going to do a wonderful job with Missile. Starting our little damage count on them. I'm actually looking forward to using Summon Snow. I think that's going to be a huge advantage. Especially since we actually have a decent chance of using a few other cards here before it. Aiming for some spell boosts. Just removing whatever we can. Fairy Whisper, they're getting a lot of fairies out here, and that's a little concerning. You don't want to see a lot of fairies get played out. Usually that's the sign of them going full on aggression when they start flooding the board. Although on the bright side, if they're going to play Axeman next turn, we should be in a pretty good position to counter. Since our Snum and Snow is actually going to do a really nice job at flooding the board. And we still hold all our Evos. Except obviously the one we literally just used. So, Greenland Axeman. Pretty predictable, honestly, so no surprise. And they did decide to go face, which probably isn't going to work in their favour very much, considering our current hand. So we can clear this board, or not quite clear the board with what we have, but with the draw maybe. Nope. Conjure Golem though, really good. Another Evo. It's going to score us a nice 6 damage, leaving them on just 12. We're definitely in a risky spot, but considering we have Omen for next turn, unless they wipe this board completely, they're very close to lethal range. I mean, they need to wipe at least 2 of these followers off. And they decided not to use their Evo, so that was a big mistake. Although even if they had of, I probably would have just used the Evo on the 3-5, attacked, got 5 health back, and pretty much rolled them in the next turn. So definitely worked to our favour really nicely. 14 damage to the face, no issues at all. So I definitely found I had some of the best matches when I focused on using Omen of Craving and getting a solid board. Although switching styles to Unbodied Witch isn't hard, especially with, of course, Heart Monica. Does a wonderful job, of course, regaining the Evo points that you have lost. In particular, her Familiar does that, which is great. Meaning Unbodied Witch can actually be used in a little bit more of a late game situation with something like Zealot, which is the only really good card to boost, I think, personally, other than maybe Windblast if you're up against, say, Dragon. But I would still normally focus on purely Zealot. I mean, Snowman King isn't bad. That could be basically infinite turns of, say, Wild Snowman or Wardets, which would be pretty nuts. So, yeah, each their own, but definitely worth giving a shot, and I would definitely recommend it if you want to try something different and have the cards to do so. Does it perform amazingly? Not really. I would say it's very middle row, probably around low tier 2, high tier 3-ish at the most. Hopefully you guys do enjoy this deck. If you do, hit the like button and subscribe for more content. You will find the deck list in the description below. Until next time, see ya.